Hi everyone, welcome to Simple Concepts. I'm your educator नियति पॉल. ये पर्टिकुलर क्लास में गाइस हम देखेंगे अर्बनाइजेशन इन इंडिया, इट्स फैक्ट्स एंड इश्यूज. सो बिफोर वी एक्चुअली स्टार्ट अप विद द लेक्चर, लेट मी टेल यू ऑल, हम जो भी यहाँ पे टॉपिक्स डिस्कस करते हैं, जो भी सिलेबस हम यहाँ पे कवर करते हैं, उनके सारे आपको नोट्स मिल सकते हैं इन द फॉर्म ऑफ PDF इफ यू ज्वाइन आवर टेलीग्राम ग्रुप. The link of the group is given in the description below. If you are unable to find the group via the link, then just go to your Telegram account. वहाँ पे सर्च में जाके अगर आप सिंपल कॉन्सेप्ट्स UPSC के नाम से अगर आप सर्च करेंगे, then you will be able to find our group. वहाँ पे हम लोग बहुत सारे क्विजेस वहाँ पे होते हैं, बहुत सारे टॉपिक्स हम वहाँ पे डिस्कस करते हैं. So do join in the group. Having said that, let's start our today's lecture. Urbanization in India, facts and issues. So guys, as we all know, urban areas have been recognized as engines of inclusive economic growth. Of the 121 crores Indians, 83.3 crore live in the rural areas, while 37.7 crores stay in the urban areas. That is approximately 32% of the population. So the Census of India 2011 defines urban settlement as all the places which have municipality, corporation, cantonment board or notified town area committee, all the other places which satisfy the following criteria. First one is minimum population of 5,000 persons, at least 75% male of main working population engaged in non-agricultural pursuits, and third one is a density of population of at least 400 persons per square kilometer. So the first category of urban units are known as statutory town, and these towns are notified under law by respective state or union territory government, and they have local bodies like municipal corporation, municipalities, etc. irrespective of demographic characteristics, for example Vadodara Municipal Corporation or Shimla Municipal Corporation. The second category of town is known as the census town. These were identified on the basis of Census 2001 data. Cities are urban areas with more than 1 lakh population. Urban areas below 1 lakh population are called as towns in India. Similarly, Census of India defines urban agglomeration, that is UA, that an urban agglomeration is a continuous urban spread constituting a town and its adjoining outgrowths, that is OGS, or two or more physically contiguous towns together with or without outgrowths of such towns. So an urban agglomeration must consist of at least a statutory town and its total population, that is all the constituents put together, should not be less than 20,000 as per the 2001 census. In varying local conditions, guys, there are similar other combinations which have been treated as urban agglomerations satisfying the basic condition of contiguity. Example, Greater Mumbai, UA, Delhi UA, etc. So speaking about outgrowths, that is OG, an outgrowth or OG is a viable unit such as a village or a hamlet, or an enumeration block made of such village or hamlet, or hamlet and clearly identifiable in terms of its boundaries and locations. Some of the examples are railway colony, university campus, port area, military camps, etc., which have come up near a statutory town outside its statutory limits but within the revenue limits of a village or village contiguous to the town. So while determining the outgrowth of town, it has been ensured that it possesses the urban features in terms of infrastructure and amenities such as pakka roads, electricity taps, drainage system for disposal of wastewater, etc. Now also these educational institutions, post offices, medical facilities, banks, etc., and physical contiguous with the core town of UA. Examples: the Central Railway Colony, OG, or Triveni Nagar, that is NECSW, OG, etc. So each such towns together with its outgrowths is treated as an integrated urban area, and it is designated as an urban agglomeration. Number of towns UA/OG 2011 according to the census of 2011 census, and they are statutory towns 4041, census towns are 3894, urban agglomerations are 475, and outgrowths are 981. So at the central level, nodal agencies which look after program and policies for urban development are Ministry of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation, or we can call it as MOHUPA, and Ministry of Urban Development. Now urban development is a state subject, as we all know, and at state level there are respective ministries, but according to 74th Constitutional Amendment Act 1992, it is mandatory for every state to form the ULBs and devolve power, conduct regular election, and they conduct regular elections, etc. So under 12th schedule of Indian Constitution, 18 such functions have been defined which are to be performed by the ULBs, and for that states should support the ULBs through finances and decentralization of power for more autonomy. But this is not uniform throughout all the states, and still more is needed to be done to empower ULBs in India. Now speaking about urban areas, they are managed by urban local bodies, ULBs, who look after the service delivery and grievances redressal of citizens. There are 8 types of urban local government in India: municipal corporation, municipality, notified area committee, town area committee, cantonment board, township, port trust, and special purpose agencies. Speaking about migration, it is the key process underlying growth of urbanization, and the process of urbanization is closely related with rural to urban migration of people. In most developing countries, the world where rate of urban growth is relatively higher, the urban-ward migration is usually high. Rural to urban migration is by far the major component of urbanization and is the chief mechanism by which urbanization trends all the world over has been accomplished. So after independence, urbanization in India is increasing at a very high pace, that we all know, but at the same time there are some problems which are becoming barriers for balanced, equitable and inclusive development. We'll be discussing each of these in our further slides. So going on to our next slide, let us now look into the history of urbanization in India. So in 1687 to 1688, the first municipal corporation in India was set up at Madras. In 1726, municipal corporation was set up in Bombay and Calcutta, and in 1882, a resolution was passed according to which panchayat were to be formed at village level, district boards, taluka boards and municipalities. They also came into existence. So at the same time, there was this British officer, Lord Ripon, who was also the Viceroy of India, and for this, Lord Ripon is known as the father of local self-government in India. Okay, so urbanization since independence has been focused through respective 5 years plans as follows. So the first 2 plans focused on institution and organization building, and same was instructed to the states to do. For example, the Delhi Government Authority, Town and Country Planning Organization came during that period. So guys, ये हम पूरी जो हिस्ट्री डिस्कस कर रहे हैं ये आपको मेंस के पर्सपेक्टिव से उतनी ज़्यादा इम्पॉर्टेंट नहीं है, but when it comes to your essays and thing, all this material can be used as a fodder material. Okay, so do take notes of all these issues, all these that we are discussing. So the third plan was from 1961 to 1966, and that was a turning point in urban planning history, as it is emphasized on importance of towns and cities is balanced regional development. So it is advised urban planning to adopt regional approach. It also emphasized the need for urban land regulation, checking of urban land prices, preparation of master plan, etc. The fourth plan went on from 1969 to 1974, and it continued with the theme of third plan, and development plans for 72 urban areas were undertaken. Regional studies in respect to metropolitan regions around Delhi, Mumbai and Calcutta were initiated. During fifth plan, Urban Land Selling Act was passed in 1976, somewhere around that, and it also advised the state governments to create metropolitan planning regions to take care of growing areas outside the administrative city limits. Mumbai Metropolitan Region Development Authority, that is MMRDA, in 1974 and Housing and Urban Development Corporation in 1975 were established. It is also emphasized the urban and industrial decentralization. So in sixth five-year plan that went on from 1978 to 1983, the plan stressed the need to develop small and medium-sized towns, that is less than 1 lakh, and a scheme of integrated development of small and medium towns, that is IDSMT. These were launched in 1979 by the central government. So during the seventh plan, some important institutional developments were done which shaped the urban development policy and planning. The National Commission on Urbanization submitted its report in 1988 and 65th Constitutional Amendment was introduced in the Lok Sabha in 1989. This was the first attempt to give urban local bodies a constitutional status with three-tier federal structure. But it was not passed and was finally passed in 1992 as 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, and it came into force in 1993, almost 26 years back. So during 8th plan, the mega city scheme was introduced in 1993 till 1994, covering the 5 mega cities of Mumbai, that is Calcutta, Chennai, Bangalore and Hyderabad. So now also IDSMT scheme was revamped through its infrastructural development programs for boosting employment generation, for diverting migration from big cities to small and medium towns. The 9th plan continued with the scheme of the 8th plan and also emphasized on decentralization and financial autonomy of urban local bodies. A new program called Swarna Jayanti Shahari Rozgar Yojana or SJSRY in 1997 with 2 sub-plan. First one was Urban Self-Employment Program and second was Urban Wage Employment Program, that is targeting for urban poverty reduction and employment. It was decided by central government to revamp SJSRY in 2013 as National Urban Livelihood Mission or NULM. Now speaking about the 10th plan, which went on from 2002 to 2007, it recognized the fact that urbanization played a key role in accelerating the economic growth in 1980s and 1990s. So as a result of economic liberalization, and also stressed that without strengthening the urban local bodies, the local urbanization cannot be achieved. The 11th plan, which went on from 2007 to 2012, introduced some innovative changes through capacity building, increasing the efficiency and productivity of the cities, dismantling the monopoly of public sector over the urban infrastructure, using technology as a tool for rapid urbanization. So in this direction, major initiative launched by the central government was JNNURM or Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission in 2005 for focused and integrated development of the urban infrastructure and services, initially for 63 cities. Now this program was to be continued till 2012, but now it has been extended, covering more number of cities. Focus on JNNURM was on the provision for urban poor, including housing, water supply and sanitation. Urban transport, road network and development of inner old areas were also included in this. Now the earlier programs as mentioned above, like Megacity, IDSMT etc. were merged within. Also under this same scheme, it was made mandatory for each cities to formulate City Development Plan or CDP for long-term vision development. It also aimed to make private players part of urban development through PPP, that is public private partnership. Speaking about the Rajiv Awas Yojana, it was launched in 2011 for creating slum free India. So also it is applicable to urban homeless and pavement dwellers. So in 2011 census was the first one that collected data on the people living in slums that have become commonplace in rapidly urbanizing India. It found that around 1 out of every 6 households in urban India, that is 17.4%, is in the slums, and what well over 1/3 of the all slum households in the country, that is 38%, are in the cities with population in excess of million. The 12th five-year plan, which went on from 2012 to 2017, proposed to consolidate JNNURM and envisaged its wider role in urban reforms. So during 12th plan, the components of JNNURM are: first one is urban infrastructure, which you can see on your computer screens. First one is urban infrastructure governance. Second is Rajiv Awas Yojana. Third one was slum rehabilitation in cities not covered under the Rajiv Awas Yojana, capacity building. And the fifth one, the plan has also highlighted the reasons which are acting as hurdles in success of this program. They were failure to mainstream the urban planning, incomplete reform and slow progress in project implementation, delay in securing land for projects, delay in getting approval from various regulators, etc. Having said that, let's move on to our next slide and see what were the changes in urban development. Okay, so as you can see on your computer screens, these were the challenges which were there in urban development. Speaking about institutional challenges, the first one was urban governance. So 74th Amendment Act has been implemented half-heartedly by the states, which has not fully empowered the urban local bodies or ULBS. The urban local bodies comprises of municipal corporation, municipalities, the Nagar Panchayats, which are to be supported by state governments to manage the urban development. For this, the urban local bodies need to clear delegations of functions, financial resources and autonomy. So at present, urban governance needs improvement for urban development, which can be done by enhancing technology, administrative and managerial capacity of ULBS. Speaking about planning, planning is mainly centralized, and till now the state planning boards and commissions have not come out with any specific planning strategies and dependent on planning commission for it. This is expected to change in the present government as planning commission has been abolished. The new focus is on empowering the states and strengthening the federal structure. In fact, for big cities, the plans have been outdated and do not reflect the concerns of urban local dwellers. This need to be taken care of by metropolitan planning committees as per the provisions of 74th Amendment Act. Now the planning needs to be decentralized and participatory to accommodate the needs of the urban dwellers. Also, there is a lack of human resources for undertaking planning on full scale. The state planning departments and national planning institutions lack qualified planning professionals. Need is to expand the scope of planners from physical to integrated planning, land use, infrastructure, environmental sustainability, social inclusion, risk reduction, economic productivity and financial diversity. Speaking about finances, major challenge is to revenue generation with ULBS. This problem can be analyzed from two perspectives. First, the state has not been given enough autonomy to ULBS to generate revenue, and second, in some case, the ULBS have failed to utilize even those tax and fee powers that they have been vested with. There are two sources of municipal revenue. First, that is the municipal owned revenue and assigned revenue. Municipal revenue are generated by municipal owned revenue through taxes and fee levied by them. Assigned revenues are those which are assigned to local governments by higher tier of government. These are growing trend of declining ratio of own revenue. There is a poor collection property taxes, use of geographical information system to map all the properties in cities can have a huge impact on assessment rate of properties that are not in the tax net. There is a need to broaden the user charge for fee of water supply, sewage and garbage disposal. Since these are the goods which have to be private characteristics and not public spillover, so charging user fee will be feasible and will improve the revenue of ULBS along with the periodic revision, of course. So once the own revenue generating capacity of all the cities will improve, they can easily get loans from the banks. At present, due to the revenue generation capabilities, banks do not give loan to urban local bodies for further development. For financing urban projects, municipal bonds are also famous, which work on the concept of pooled financing. Speaking about regulator, so there is an exponential increase in the real estate encroaching the agricultural lands. Thus, also the rates are very high which are not affordable, and other irregularities are also in practice that we all know. So for this we badly need this regulator which can make level playing field and will be instrumental for affordable housing and checking corrupt practices in real estate sector. Speaking about the infrastructural changes, so speaking about the housing, okay, so housing provision for the growing urban population will be the biggest challenge for the government. The growth cost of houses comparison is to income of the urban middle class has been made possible for majority of the lower income groups and are residing in the congested accommodation, and many of those are devoid of proper ventilation, lighting, water supply, sewage system, etc. For instance, Delhi, the current estimate, let us not go into the current estimate, but there was this shortage of 5 lakh dwelling units for coming decades. So the United Nations Center for Human Settlements introduced the concept of housing poverty, which includes individual and households who lack safe, secure and healthy shelter with basic infrastructure such as pipe water and adequate provision for sanitation, drainage and removal of household waste. So speaking about the safe drinking water, the safe drinking water resources are also found to be contaminated because of water in the cities are inadequate, and in the future the expected population cannot be accommodated without a drastic improvement in the availability of water. The expenses on water treatment and reuse will grow manifold. Speaking about sanitation, the poor sanitation condition is another gloomy feature in the urban areas and particularly in the slums and unauthorized colonies of urban areas. The drainage system in many unorganized colonies and slums are either non-existing, and if existing are in bad shape and in bits resulting in blockage of wastewater. The unsanitary conditions which led to many sanitation related disease such as diarrhea and malaria. Unsafe garbage disposal is one of the critical problems in urban areas, and garbage management always remained a major challenge. Now let us talk something about the health conditions. So the important indicators of human development are education and health. The health conditions of urban poor in some areas are even more adverse compared to the rural areas. We can very well see this because of this COVID-19 situation. It can be clearly seen. So as many as 20 million children in developing countries are dying consequent to drinking water. About 6 lakh persons are losing their lives on account of indoor air pollution. So the National Family Health Survey 2006-2007 has envisaged that a lot of women and children are suffering from nutritional anemia and diseases like tuberculosis and asthma are occurring in good number. Providing healthcare services to the growing urban population is a major challenge before the government healthcare delivery system. They have to take help of private players. Private players as public health facilitates are poor. In case of migrants, they cannot take the benefits of government policies, so they have to pay very high charges, which keep them in vicious cycle of poverty. Urban education system also is becoming elite in private institutions due to limited seats and high charged fee. The condition of public educational institution is, of course, we can say as dismissal. So speaking about urban public transport, as high income individuals are buying more private vehicles and use less public transport, such huge number of vehicles in cities is causing more traffic jam, which in turn decreases the efficiency of public transport. Also, the penetration of public transport is less, which makes people use private vehicles. So public transport is less disabled friendly. There is also a lack of infrastructure and poor maintenance of existing public transport system. Now there are also some of the other challenges that have been faced, like environmental concerns, urban crime. So speaking about environmental concern, vulnerability to risk posed by increasing man-made and natural disasters, according to UNDP, 70% of Indian population is at risk to floods and 60% susceptible to earthquakes. The risks are higher in urban areas owing to density and overcrowding. Urban areas are becoming, heat islands. Groundwater is not being recharged, and water crisis is also persistent. Here, making water harvesting is compulsory, while it will be beneficial. Now, speaking about the urban crime. So prevention of urban crime is yet another challenge before the government of states having more number of urban areas, and particularly the metropolitan cities. The mega cities are facing increased criminal activities on account of unchecked migration, illegal settlements and diverse socio-cultural disparities, organized groups, gangsters, professional criminals for wishing a lavish life in metropolis. The cities of Delhi, Mumbai and Bengaluru have accounted for 60.2% and 9.5% and 8.1% respectively of the local crime record from 35 mega cities. Prevention of crime in mega cities is as big challenge as it is before the city government in the city government in India. So we will discuss the remaining topics and in our further slides. So guys, that's all for this today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, do hit the like button. अगर आपके कुछ important सुझाव हो, आप हमें कुछ suggest करना चाहते हैं, then do mention all your comments in the comment section below. If you are new to our platform, do hit the subscribe button and press the notification icon so that you can get notified every time we are on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching.